Thanks.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I asked about why the U.S. has not shared information it had about ISIL's oil routes with the UN. You said you would check. Any update?
I might. I need reading glasses even for this big font, apparently. So we're going to have to make the text bigger, I think. Let's see, I think I have it here somewhere. It's not there. It's not there. Okay, so your question was, I think it was, are we pressuring Turkey to report to report ISIL smuggling? Is that?
Actually, that would be another question that I would ask.
I'm so
But
glad
I
I
asked
offered
why
that.
the U.S. has not
All right,
shared.
so let me. I'm going to go through this since it's fairly legalistic. So you're just going to have to bear with me, okay? The United States supported the adoption of UNSCR 2199. This is back in February of this year, which included a range of tools, including sanctions and other binding measures to degrade ISIL's ability to carry out brutal terrorist attacks. The resolution focuses extensively on ISIL's raising of funds through oil smuggling, looting of antiquities, kidnapping for ransom, donations, and other illicit activities. And we've talked about that widely, that they get many sources of revenue. The resolution also reaffirms existing prohibitions on supplying ISIL with arms and related material. The resolution calls on states to report to the Security Council's 1267-1989 Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee any interdictions in their territory of oil products, modular refineries, and related material. It does not require states to report more generally on ISIL's oil trade. So it requires them to report on interdictions, but not more generally on the oil trade itself. However, upon request by the Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee's monitoring team, its expert group, the United States has provided information on ISIL's financing for its reports and briefings to the Sanctions Committee and Security Council. We've done that on our own. We intend to continue to provide the monitoring team with high-quality information as appropriate. The monitoring team is able to gather and assess information from all states and a variety of other sources, and we continue to encourage everyone to support its work. As we said before, and I think this is important, we reject the premise that the Turkish government is in league with ISIL to smuggle oil. We have seen no evidence to support such an accusation. Moreover, Turkey is taking steps to improve the security of its borders with Syria in cooperation with its international partners. And those efforts are going to continue to increase in the coming weeks and months. Okay?
Has the United States provided information on ISIL oil routes that Mr. Zubin of the U.S. Treasury has spoken to, and he was saying that part of ISIL's oil goes to the Syrian government and some of it crosses the border into Turkey?
I don't have any specifics with respect to what information has been transmitted. As I said, we've taken the liberty on our own and an own initiative to provide the monitoring team high-quality information as appropriate on ISIL's ability to finance itself in all ways. So we've taken that initiative on our own. I don't have any specifics to read out with you with respect to what information, and frankly, I don't know that it would be appropriate for me to get into that from a public podium. But I think, again, it's important that this resolution doesn't require states to report more generally on ISIL's oil trade. It only requires them to report on the interdiction of oil or oil products.
Well, the point 14 in that resolution says it calls upon member states to improve international, regional, and sub-regional cooperation, including through increased sharing of information for the purpose of identifying smuggling routes used by ISIL and ANF.
We share a great deal of information about what we know and what we've come to learn about ISIL's ability to finance itself with our partners in the coalition. But as I think I've made clear many times from this podium, I'm not going to get into operational matters, nor am I going to talk about intelligence matters. But of course we take seriously our commitments, not just under the UN, but as a leader of this coalition, to share information as appropriate. We all know that oil smuggling is one source of revenue for ISIL. One, not the only one, one. And I can assure you that writ large, we do what we can to share information as appropriate with partners in the coalition.
John, did the Secretary bring this issue up in Moscow and ask the Russians to do something about Syrian purchases of ISIL oil? Is there anything you
I
can
don't
share
have
with us
any
on
more
that?
specific readout of the discussions than what you saw the Secretary himself read it out when he went to the
Okay.
podium afterward. I just don't have any more detail than that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you have any comment on Australia's freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea?
Nope.
I'm
I would
presuming-
refer you to the Australians to speak about their freedom of navigation operations.
Okay. But in general, I'm assuming that you would support it, given your stance.
I don't
on
have
things.
any information on it. I mean, as you've heard me say many times, the freedom of navigation is a principle that every sovereign nation must protect and needs to protect and needs to respect, quite frankly. And I would, leave it to sovereign nations with sovereign navies to speak to whatever freedom of navigation operations they're conducting. For our part, again, I don't want to get into operational stuff here from the podium, but we've talked about it in the past. Our Navy has conducted freedom of navigation ops all around the world, and I think you can expect for us for that to continue. But I wouldn't speak for Australia. I wouldn't do that. But every nation has that. When it comes to international waters and freedom of navigation, every nation has that right and responsibility.
Ask
Wow,
a
this is going to
question.
be a short one today.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
I thought I was done.
I'll make it an easy one for you to shut down. I just want to go back to this resolution. It requires countries to report on interdictions. Why didn't it require them to report on any aspects of trade? Wouldn't that be much more useful?
No, it says, I mean, this specific one that we're talking about
Yeah.
calls on states to report to the Security Council's Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee any interdictions in their territory,
Okay.
of oil products, modular refineries, and related material. So it's two things there: interdictions of it, not the mere presence of it or knowledge of it in general, although that can be. But it's specifically required to interdictions of and then the second point is in their territory, in a nation's territory, of oil products, modular refineries, and related material. And
But
why
the-
it was written that way, I can't speak to that. I
But
mean,
the
you have to go to the
resolution-
UN
question.
on that. I
But
the
can't tell you
resolution-
why it was written that way.
But the resolution also has another point, which says, and I just quoted it, calls upon member states to improve international, regional, and sub-regional cooperation, including through increased sharing of information for the purpose of identifying smuggling routes used by ISIL and ANF and other terrorist groups.
And I told you, we take our responsibilities
How
under
do
that
you-
resolution and in the international community writ large to share information. But if you're asking me to specifically get up here and tell you about the intelligence matter that we're providing and who it's going to and what it's saying, I'm simply not going to do that, and you know that I won't do that.
I understood. As I understood, you said the resolution does not call on member states to share information, but this provision seems to be speaking to the opposite.
What I
doesn't it?
said was, and I'll read it again, it does not, the resolution, does not require states to report more generally on ISIL's oil trade in more broad terms. There's no requirement to do that. That
I
doesn't
did
mean
not
that a
say
state.
required, I said
That
called
doesn't mean
on.
that. I think. Look, I don't have all the documents in front of me, but it seems to me like you're conflating two things. One, which is a requirement in the resolution to do certain things, and no requirement to do others, and a general statement about encouraging and urging the sharing of information. Those two are not opposed. Again, I don't have the language, I don't have the benefit of the language in front of me the way you do, but as you are reading it back to me, I don't see that those two things are opposed at all. In fact, they can be mutually reinforcing to one another. I'm not clear about what the point you're trying to make, except maybe you're kind of getting around a point here that the United States isn't meeting our obligations. And if that's the point that, and buried in the question, forgive me if I'm wrong, but if that's the point you're trying to make, I absolutely fundamentally reject it. The United States is following the resolution. And more broadly, as a leader of the coalition, sharing information as appropriate with our partners in this effort. But if you're asking me to lay all that out for you here at the podium, it would be completely inappropriate, and I won't do it.
John, can I follow up on another thing you said? You were very careful about your language when you said that the U.S. sees no link between oil smuggling and the government of Turkey. Do you have any concerns about Turkish leaders or their families? and having connections to or
As I said, we
earning money from.
reject the premise that the Turkish government is in league or in any way involved with ISIL to smuggle oil. But there's absolutely no evidence to support that accusation.
The government
None.
or individual members of.
I can't say it anymore. I mean, a government is made up of individuals, isn't it? I mean,
Okay.
so we've seen no indication that there's any evidence to this false accusation. Yeah.
People in the government.
I've said it as clearly as I can.